All right. Hello, everyone, and thank you for joining us today. My name's Scott, and I'm here with Carlos, who I'll introduce more in a moment. But if you are here for the webinar Top Email Marketing Trends, Insights, and Benchmarks, you're in the right place. Um, and this is actually the first session in a three-part series of webinars that we called Emails That Convert, Unlocking Growth Through Modern Email Marketing Tactics. The goal of this series is to help you accelerate growth in your email channel by highlighting some of the top tactics that successful email marketers are using today. And to bring you the best of the best content, advice, speakers, we partnered with GetResponse, one of the leading email marketing platforms. They bring also a ton of data-backed insights that we will show and share with you today, based on the learnings of thousands of customers over the years. So I'll briefly just go over the agenda, what we're going to be covering today. First, we'll kind of hop right into highlighting some of the latest overall email performance benchmarks, including a breakdown by industry. Then we'll discuss how marketers are currently using AI for email marketing purposes. Next, we'll cover the best days and times to send your emails for maximum engagement. We'll go over best practices when it comes to email formatting, email personalization, and things like that. And then finally, like I said, we'll save some time at the end to answer any audience questions you may have. So feel free to submit them at any point throughout the web. All right. Let's move on to introductions. Our guest today and for the whole series is Carlos Gil, who is a growth advisor and brand evangelist at GetResponse. Carlos, I'll let you kind of take the floor. Could you take a moment to introduce yourself and tell us a little
Sure.
bit GetResponse?
Yeah, absolutely. So, first of all, thank you so much to Scott and Marketer Hire for partnering with me on this series. We did a webinar that was very well received last year. And I just want to first start off by saying, as a career digital marketer, I have been following the Marketer Hire brand for many years now. Marketer Hire always popping up in my feeds on Instagram, on Facebook. So, for me to be able to partner and collaborate with Marketer Hire on behalf of GetResponse is definitely an honor. So thank you to Scott and the Marketer Hire team for working with us on this. So like Scott said, I represent a company called GetResponse. GetResponse is one of the oldest email marketing service providers in the entire industry. So before there was a MailChimp or some of these other folks in the industry, GetResponse has been around since the late 90s. I really consider GetResponse to be one of the pioneers of email marketing. And what's really impressive about GetResponse is that they have been able to sustain the test of time, right? They've been able to evolve with the times. And GetResponse goes well beyond email marketing. So while it's very much known as like a legacy email marketing service provider, today it's evolved into a whole digital marketing suite of tools that you can use to grow your business, keep your audiences engaged, and make more money. So in addition to email, you've got landing pages, you've got website builders. You can create courses within GetResponse. You can do paid newsletters, lead magnets, funnels. You can even host webinars, right? So it's really it's like all in one suite of digital marketing tools. I joined the company as their brand evangelist last year. I'll tell you a little bit about myself. Just want to go back to the last slide, Scott. I've worked in digital marketing since 2008, primarily on the social media marketing side. So I've been on the in-house side as a social media marketing leader. I've worked for brands like LinkedIn. And then over the last 8 years, I've spent time independently advising, consulting, started a couple brands of my own, wrote a couple of books, and GetResponse. When they knocked on my door last year, they're like, hey, look, we're looking for someone that can serve as a face of our brand here in the US, but also serve as a thought leader. And that's what I enjoy. I love doing stuff like this. I love to teach. And I myself am not a career email marketer. And what I love about doing talks like this is I'm going to speak to you very much from the standpoint of someone that has spent the majority of his career working in social media, but now realizing more than ever that you cannot rely on social networks in order to build a community and scale a brand. You need to be using social and email together. So a lot of what you're going to hear me talk about today is coming from the standpoint of I work with an ESP, I have access to all this data, I know what works. A lot of what I'm going to be sharing with you is led by data, and that being our U.S. benchmarks report. So every single year, GetResponse goes out. They do an analysis of all the emails being sent through their platform. Like what's really cool about working with an ESP is they have so much data that they're able to leverage. So they do this benchmark report every year. They analyze all the emails sent, and then you're going to hear this or see this early on. A lot of those findings are from our US benchmarks report, which encompasses over 1 billion emails sent using Get Response. So it's not pie in the sky fluff. It's not like data that we found on a website somewhere on the web. It's not ChatGPT. It is real data from real users of Get Response. So before I get started, I want to invite all of you to do a couple things. First of all, let's connect on LinkedIn, right? We're going to do a 3-part series. Hopefully you tune in for all 3. But if you have any questions I'm not able to get to today, if there's anything that comes to mind, you want to bounce any ideas, hit me up. That's why I'm here. Find me on LinkedIn, connect with me. I'm also on Instagram and Carlos Gill 83. I'm really active on the gram. So feel free to hit me up on there. Like, you're not limited to just connecting with me on LinkedIn. And look, I hope that if you're not using email today, you feel inspired to sign up for Get Response. I hope if you're using email and you're not using it to the best of your abilities, that you learn 1 or 2 tactics that you can quickly implement and start seeing more value in it. So I know it's a very long-winded introduction, Scott, but I'll turn it back over to you. And I'm ready to get started when you are.
Awesome. No, a very helpful intro. Thank you for joining. I'm very excited to kind of go through the data, hear your perspectives. So yeah, thanks for joining us. My name, I'll kind of serve as moderator today. My name is Scott Strand. I have 10 years of B2B SaaS demand generation experience, spanning many industries. So, from marketing and sales to finance and HR to IT and cybersecurity. I specialize in running high impact webinar campaigns that convert into pipeline, and I lend my experience here at Marketer Hire. I also have quite a bit of a background in email marketing, so I'll definitely have a lot of my own thoughts about some of the data we pulled up for you all today. So I'm excited to get into it. But first, if you are attending this webinar and concerned about the time or expertise it might take to set up and run a successful email marketing program, that's where Marketer Hire can really help. We basically have a network of the top 1% of marketers looking for freelance work. And so we basically help match everyone who's looking for this kind of work with their perfect fit freelancer. So if you're interested in that at any point, you can visit marketerhire.com and you basically can book a custom scoping session with our team. I know there's a lot of certain platforms like Get Response make it really easy in a lot of ways. But you still need someone running, managing this program, and we have a ton of email marketers in our network. So,
Interject, Scott, and
yeah,
just say one thing. With Get Response, we service over 400,000 customers around the world. Those customers often will come to me via the DMs, or I'll give you an example. I just came back from Social Media Marketing World last week, and I'm constantly meeting marketers that need email marketing help, right? Like, what we do with providing the platform is one piece of the puzzle. But oftentimes, once I start talking about marketing automation and funnels, this, that, and the other, they're like, hey, whoa, I don't know how to do all that. Can you help me? So that is where I see Marketer Hire being a key partner to what we're trying to build here and Get Response, especially here in the US, right? So doing educational, programming like this is one part of the equation. But if you have experience in email marketing, if you are a freelancer, and like Scott said, if you're looking, potentially work with a pipeline of customers, like, please sign up for Marketer Hire, and we'll find a way on the back end to connect you with folks that are looking for email marketing help.
yep, awesome, perfect. Well, with that, let's get right into it. I want to start today's presentation by covering some of the high-level performance metrics for email, and then comparing them to other channels a little bit. I always find it's really helpful to kind of know these benchmarks so you can kind of judge your own program, know if you need to improve or if you're exceeding, great. But in this comparison, you'll kind of see that email marketing dominates as a channel, and it's really a channel you can't afford to ignore. So Carlos, can you kind of kick us off and sharing some of these benchmarks?
Yeah, look, data is really important, whether it's email data, whether it's social data, website visits. Like, you need to be analyzing the data. You need to look at what's under the hood, because that is going to be the diagnosis that tells you if you are doing a good job or not. And I always like to look at industry data. I like to look at comparisons. because there's something to be said about that. And the thing about data that you have to know is this, like, data oftentimes is to give you a barometer of where you stand. It's not necessarily to like critique you. Like oftentimes you're looking at your own data because only you have access, right, to see what's on the back end. So throughout my career, I've always been one that like, I want to be deep in the data. I want to see where we stand. I want to see where we can improve. I'm a big fan of looking at what works and what doesn't work, right? So whether it's a social media campaign or an email campaign, I'm always one that like, I will look at what are the top performing pieces of content, what are the top performing campaigns, and what are the lowest performing. The ones that perform the best, let's do more of that. The ones that don't perform the best, let's eliminate those. Even when it comes to things like segmentation, you'll hear me talk about it here today as well, right? I'm a big fan of creating segmented audiences because I really want to be able to speak a certain way to my most engaged fans or subscribers. And then those that never open up an email, I want to be able to like target them. I want to be able to speak to them a certain way and get content in front of them a certain way. And that's what data is for, right? So if you're afraid to like look at your numbers, if you think that your boss is going to get on you because you're not really like meeting the KPIs or expectations, like look at that as a good thing. So if we want to switch over to the next slide to kind of kick it off here, I first want to start off by saying email marketing, especially when comparing it to channels like social, it's not right. A lot of marketers that I come across, especially in this role to get response, they often will kind of say like, hey, you're working for an email marketing company. Like, email's not really relevant anymore, or it's dead, or they'll ask me like these questions, like, is email still relevant? And I'll have to look at them and say like, dude, like how many times do you check your email throughout the day? Right. Like I know we all live by our iPhones or mobile devices. In addition to social, which I just want to start off by saying, like, I find social media to be very exhausting as a consumer, right? You go on there, you're seeing other people's highlight reels. As a marketer, as a personal brand, you feel like you have to catch up, and so you're always having to post content. You're always having to monitor. Like what I love about emails, it's very passive, right? Like I can check an email, open it, and I can come back to it, right? Without my inbox, like, showing me 1,000 other emails, just like social. So there's something to be said about like psychology. What I will say is that from a marketer's lens, social gives you that instant dopamine rush where email doesn't necessarily give to you. And I'll give you an example here in just a moment. Very real life example. Social, you post content, you can very quickly get likes. You can very quickly get that instant ROI, that gratification, even if that doesn't translate to dollars and cents. When it comes to email, I use a function within Get Response called perfect timing. I program every single email to be sent out the perfect time. So if I know based on data that email sent at, let's say, 9 a.m. on a Tuesday perform infinitely better than on a Wednesday, I'm going to make sure that I schedule that campaign to hit every person on my list at 9 a.m. in their time zone. So it might take a good 24 hours for that campaign to be sent, but I'm able to in real time look at the data, the open rate, the click through rate. I'm able to see exactly who's looking at that. Social doesn't go that deep. It doesn't give me that data. So yes, while the instant ROI, the gratification, the dopamine rush of the viral video feels good, it's almost like fool's gold because you're really not able to go deep oftentimes and see how that translates directly to sales. So you see the numbers here on the screen. I'm going to go through this, and then Scott, I would love for you to chime in and let me know your thoughts. Let's just kind of compare tick for 10. This is based on 1 billion emails sent through Get Response, right? Your average email open rate is 32%, right? I don't care who you are. I don't care if you're the biggest brand, Nike, Coke, Starbucks. I don't care if you're Mr. Beast. There's nobody on social media with a sizable following that is seeing a 30+% open rate on any of their content. If that's you, like, please, I would love for you to screenshot it and send me a message on LinkedIn because I will retract that statement. I will use you as the golden example, right? I would love to see what you're posting. But the reality is that email, because you're going direct to consumer, you're able to bypass the algorithms. You're always going to see a much higher open rate. And I want to go one step further. If you're segmenting your audiences and you're only sending emails to like your most engaged, like for example, in my Get Response account, I've got about 30,000 contacts that are just mine, like Carlos Gil contacts that I've accumulated over the years. Within that 30,000 like contact segment, I have what I call my open insiders VIP circle. These are the people that within the last 5 campaigns have opened up every single email. That's a much smaller number, right? About 7,000 people. But you want to know what my open rate is amongst those 7,000 people? It's close to 80%, right? That's a really strong conversion ratio. And these aren't people that I'm selling to. These are people I'm vibing with digitally. These are people that I'm just keeping them in the loop of what I'm doing professionally. And when I need to sell them on something, I have a much higher likelihood of activating that audience. And then you see the numbers here: click through rate, right around 2%, quick to open rate, 6%. Like, these are all numbers that, while the 32% open rate sounds really good, you want to hone in on these click through rates. You want to hone in on these much smaller numbers, because that's where the magic happens, right? Those are the people that not only they're opening, but they're going one step further. They're going to your website. They're learning about what it is that you do. They're at least taking that extra step. And these are the ones, again, as we talk about automation, segmentation, you really want to hone in and focus on them. And then you see here, average email satisfaction, very small unsubscribe rates, very small bounce, very small spam. Bounce rates can be tricky though. Bounce rates can completely kill your ability to send with a lot of different platforms. There's a partner that we use at GetResponse called Zero Bounce. I recommend that you look into what they do. They will essentially help you to clean up your email lists before you upload them into a platform like GetResponse. And then even as you start using GetResponse or your ESP of choice, you need to monitor your spam rates and bounce rates and ensure that you're always taking precautions in your cleaning list. Because I'll give you an example. Throughout the years, I've been able to build my list off the backs of speaking engagements. And it's a lot of folks that are using their work emails to opt into my newsletter. Well, in this market, a lot of people are getting laid off. A lot of people are switching jobs. So that corporate email no longer is relevant. And the more you send that corporate email and it bounces, that is going to hinder your deliverability within not just GetResponse, but any ESP. Scott, what are your thoughts?
Yeah, no, that makes a lot of sense. It also shows like the open rate, average satisfaction, like that. I've always put like you have the unsubscribe rate, everyone knows about it. So if you can keep that low, that shows that you're like sending interesting, relevant content. Like really don't get that feedback from LinkedIn as much. You're not being able to see unsubscriber, unfollow rates, and it's much harder to do that also. So obviously you do want to, of course, always be thinking about the content that you are sending, making sure it's value added first. But I think this just kind of shows that it's a very strong channel compared to other channels that we might be newer, flashier, more exciting. But I was going to skip ahead, like you kind of touched on this, but you had put some average social engagement rates per platform, which I'm sure vary. But when you see that engagement versus email, it's just kind of like a very clear indicator that this is reaching people, and maybe reaching people at a better time too. Instead of like while you're scrolling on your phone, maybe you're completely not in work mode at all. But email is oftentimes where you are catching people still in work mode. They might be more willing to interact with something that's work related a lot of the time.
So first of all, I love making these sessions really interactive. So I would love for y'all to get your questions in the chat. And I'd love for us to kind of have some more real-time participation here. So I would love to know if these numbers, either on the social side or email side, align with what you're currently seeing. What I will kind of call some BS on is the average social engagement. So I can stand, and die on the hill that what you see on the left side for average email engagement, this is GetResponse data. On the other side, social, I will push back on this. Like, I personally don't have 9% average social engagement on Instagram, right? It's much lower. I can tell you across the board on all of these platforms, I personally have a presence. The engagement is much lower than even what I see here. So again, you see this big contrast. Let's assume best case scenario, you're getting 9% engagement on Instagram, 2% on Facebook, 3 to 6% on TikTok. That's still a very small number by comparison. Like, unless you're a personal brand that's continuously cultivating, growing a personal brand, growing followers, or if you're a business brand, right? Like, the average person I see on social, like on Instagram, has like anywhere from 1,000 to 2,000 followers, right? So even at 9%, if you have 1,000 followers, that's a small number, right? 90 people that are watching your content. I would put any day, 1,000 email subscribers are going to be much more engaged and much more effective long-term for marketing than even 10,000 social media followers. What do you say, Scott?
Yeah, no, I agree. Yeah, I know you have like a large following, so it's interesting to hear your perspective of like how it kind of compares, like with if there's a similar amounts, like what is that kind of average engagement rate via email or social? But obviously, each serve different purposes as well. So
All right, so I think we can move on to the next slide here.
yeah, exactly.
So look, key takeaways, without necessarily having to read line by line what's on the screen, like the key takeaway that you need to know if you're kind of debating email versus social, like honestly, I have it here for theatrics purposes. It's not debating email versus social. It's using email with social. Like that's really, you need to be in the mind frame nowadays, whether you're a freelancer using Marketer Hire to grow your business, or whether you are, doing email marketing for a client. Email and social need to be speaking together, right? That's going to be the most effective way to use these mediums. And I'll just kind of tell you very quickly how you do that is by giving your social media followers an incentive to join your email newsletter, right? I'm a big fan of storytelling on social. I love Instagram stories, love Snapchat, love using even mediums like TikTok to post content that feels a little bit more human, less businessy, less salesy. Like keep pressing all these buttons that you're pressing on social, both the caveat being that you have a destination to send people to. The destination to send people to shouldn't always be your website to go buy something. People today don't want to be sold to, they want to be engaged. Like write that down. Like remember what I'm about to say. People today, consumers today don't want to be sold to, they want to be engaged. So you use social media as a way to engage an audience. Think about it as top of the funnel awareness for your brand. And then the funnel being drive them to a lead magnet, a landing page, have some sort of a hook that they're going to want to opt into your email newsletter. And then once you have them in your email newsletter, now the name of the game is to nurture them. But again, key takeaway for you is email marketing is one of the most effective and also one of the most cost-effective marketing channels. What I'd really like to challenge you on before we move forward here is set yourself a goal over the next 30 days. And I'm going to kind of break this goal down for you. Either set a goal that if you're already using email, you're going to be much more strategic in how you use it, but you can at least see an increase in of 10% on your open rate. And the way that you're going to do this by segmenting your audiences out. By segmenting your audiences out and focusing on your most engaged segment, you're going to very quickly see a spike in open rates. Or if you're kind of new in the game in email, like I'd like to believe out of the 80 some people watching this right now, there's got to be someone watching this that's a freelancer of some sort. And you probably want to learn how you can use email to be more effective to get more clients. And if that's you, cool. Focus on building person by person. And the way that you're going to do this is use LinkedIn to talk about what you do. But then as people engage with that content, get them to opt in to your newsletter. So now you have direct lines of access to them. I'll tell you, about a year ago, when I started my like kind of re-entry into the corporate marketing marketplace, one of the things that I did, and apologies, as an ESP, GetResponse is going to hate that I say this, but again, I'm also someone that believes in savage marketing. So I'm going to kind of give you guys the ninja growth hack. One of the things that I did was LinkedIn allows you to export your contacts, and they've kind of changed the parameters on this over the years. You used to be able to export your entire contact list from LinkedIn. Now you can export who has opted in to have their email address shared. There's a big difference. So like I went from having 30,000 first degree connections. Out of those 30,000, like 2,000 of them have opted in to have their email shared. Well, when you're on the job hunt, when you're freelancing, when you're hustling to get business, you're going to find ways, you need to find ways to get in front of that audience. So I exported those limited contacts I had and imported them into the ESP that I was using at the time. And I used that as the basis to like get my name out there. And guess what? Eventually it led me to this role with GetResponse, because now I was going omni-channel with my search as a freelancer, as a consultant. So this would be my recommendation to you. If you're kind of just getting started, like you gotta grade that. You gotta go guerrilla marketing. But to add a caveat to that, and Scott, I know we got lots to cover, so I won't dominate this part of it. My caveat to that would be clean your list. What you don't want to do is sign up for GetResponse and like you add your list, you build out your first campaign, and then you get flagged for spam. What you want to do is you want to clean your list, use a partner again, like Zero Bounce, that can parse out and remove email addresses that have a high likelihood of bouncing.
Perfect. Cool. Yeah, I will keep us moving along here. This is still kind of looking at different benchmarks. Obviously, we look at the high level numbers, and that's always kind of a great benchmark to compare yourself against. However, with different, businesses, different types of audiences that you're targeting, there will be lots of differences in what those metrics are. Some industries, audiences are way more prone to open and click on and engage with emails versus some that are much more reserved. So, depending on whatever business you're in, whatever audiences you're targeting, it can be really good to see kind of the industry breakdown. And luckily, Get Responses report has that information. So I was just wondering if you could kind of quick highlight some of like the top performing industries uh, and worst performing industries, and like maybe any insights you have on why that is, or even just like how to think about it when.
For sure.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, I'll go through this. I'm going to spend too much time on this because I think the value that a lot of folks watching are going to get is from learning things like the impact of send times, dates, emojis, AI, things like that. But
Yeah.
it's important to look at industries because a lot of times, for example, I'll be at a conference. I saw someone that's here in the chat. They met me at a digital summit in Atlanta. And so shout out to that person. And oftentimes people come up to me and they'll say like, hey, I work in this industry and how often should I send emails? And this is where the data is really important because there's a fine line here. You don't want to take an audience that over indexes in terms of reach and click through rates, but then water down your content so much where now you start to see decline. Like communications industry, I would say would be like marketing PR, right? Like we as communicators, I would consider myself a communicator any day, even though I label myself as a marketer. Us as communicators, like we want information, right? We want to know what's happening in our industry. So if I get an email, for example, from Adweek or any sort of authority in the marketing or communication space, there's a high likelihood that I'm going to open that email and browse through it, right? Because I want to be informed. And then I think the same thing can be said with a lot of these different industries that you see here, like legal, tech, and high tech, right? These are industries where people want to be tapped in. They want to be in the know. And whether it's email content that you create or social content, I believe that educational content is always going to outperform, right, sales content. Because if you're informing and educating your audience, there's value in that, right? So these right here, based on our benchmark report, our three industries are crushing it. I think we can move to the next slide. These are industries that even though there's room for improvement, I would still consider a 28 to 30% open rate to be really strong. I think the click-through rate's a little bit lower, but again, like health and beauty, financial services, publishing, which is books or magazines, what do you normally see from them, right? A health and beauty brand like a Sephora, for example, or a financial services company like an E-Trade, you have a higher likelihood that what they're doing is they're hitting you up every single day with an offer. And keep in mind what I said, people don't want to be sold to, they want to be engaged. So the learnings of this is anytime you show up in someone's inbox, you need to have a good balance of educational content versus promotional content. I would say always lean on the side of using email as a vehicle to educate and do it in a way that's easy to consume. That's not like long and drawn out. That's going to keep people wanting to open. So if you're familiar with like the Morning Brew, I love their newsletter because it's easy to consume. It's bite-sized chunks of information versus like a very long, drawn out, like the one I think about, because we're talking about financial services, like Motley Fool, for example. They tend to send out very long, detailed emails. Today's consumer folks, like whether you're a Gen Z or a millennial, Gen X, like we're getting a lot of information fed to us, right? Everywhere we turn, right? You open up your phone, you go on social media, you open up your inbox, information overload. So I'd say like less is best nowadays, and stick in that like Morning Brew type formula where when you're appearing, you're educating your audience, but you're giving them bite-sized chunks of information.
Yep. Yep. Yeah, I agree with a lot of that. The kind of key takeaway, I think you've summarized nicely. It really helps, like depending on your audience, make sure to tailor your email strategy to that audience and what they're there for. Um, Obviously, some will just by default. Some industries will have lower open rates or lower click-through rates than others. But you kind of can test a lot of different targeting strategies to discover what would improve your engagement rates the best for what you want. But I loved the action item you kind of had here. If you want to mention that to the.
Yeah, I would say like, look, email marketing doesn't need to be difficult at all, but let the data guide your next moves. Let the data really guide your strategy. So my recommendation to you would be to review your last 5 sentences, right? Every single one of those things, as you see the instructions here on the screen, like revise your copy to include educational content or thought leadership that's relevant to your industry, right? And it doesn't need to be difficult. Like you don't need to go out and produce like all this fresh content. You can find a relevant article on the web related to your industry, and then you can either just share that or you can share a position. Like I love, for example, if you opt in to Get Responses email newsletter, we send out a roundup of things happening within the Get Response ecosystem. Now, again, we're a B2B brand, right? So things aren't always changing on a week to week. We might announce a webinar like this. We might announce a new product update. We might announce a promotion, right? But the value of the email is as you scroll down, there is relevant insights to our audience. Who's using email marketer, right? It's businesses, it's marketers themselves, right? So we have found a good balance to incorporate thought leadership. That's, a combination of blogs, it's a combination of, third-party sites. So my recommendation would be like follow the roadmap of what every successful business and brand is doing, but just mold that to your industry. So articles, education. Hey, look, ChatGPT nowadays makes it really easy, right? Like ask ChatGPT, like, what are 5 things someone in my industry would want to hear from my business? Let ChatGPT do the writing for you. Or go one step further, let Get Responses built-in AI tools do that work for you. It doesn't need to be difficult, but most importantly, review those last 5 sentences, look at the actual analytics, see if there's any disparity in open and click-through rates, and then leverage the ones that did perform well, what worked well, and then look at the ones that didn't perform as well and analyze what did I do differently in one email versus other. I can guarantee you, I'm willing to bet any day on this, the email that you didn't sell a single thing received higher open rates and higher click-through rates, definitely higher click-through rates. People can kind of perceive in the subject line alone if you're trying to sell them something. Like guarantee you, if you had any sort of sales copy in the subject line, that's going to be the emails that you saw the lowest open and click-through rates.
Yep, I agree. Well, cool. I'd love to turn, from these tons of metrics, benchmarks to kind of like your thoughts about AI in email. I know we have some stats here as well, to kind of back up like what's kind of the current position of email marketers using AI to get their jobs done, to get these different email tasks done. Because a lot of people kind of worry about where AI will kind of play and how it will change into each kind of sector, especially of marketing. I feel like is a high chance for kind of change from AI. But to kind of put it like we know it affects content like in a lot of ways, and email is part of content. I'm just wondering, like, how have you seen AI affect the day-to-day of email marketers, and kind of what impact will it have on email marketing going forward?
Yeah. So if we want to open up the next slide, I'll kind of, kick this off. So first of all, AI, as you see right here, it is a tool. It's not an end all be all. Like AI, like holistically, and I don't want to go too far down the rabbit hole or rant here. AI holistically is just making marketing a lot noisier, and it's making the internet and social media much more fragmented and noisier than ever before, right? But I could sit here, I can complain to you all watching this, but you don't want to hear that. And it doesn't bring any value. So the reality is that AI is not going away. AI, in some cases, makes our jobs a lot easier. So we should lean in and embrace it. That being said, here you see, based on our research, only 2% of folks from our benchmark report using Get Response are actively using AI tools for email marketing. I believe once we do this report for this year, for 2025, we're probably going to see a much higher number. And the reason for that is we now have built-in AI tools into Get Response, feel very similar to ChatGPT, to where you can literally spell out, this is my objective, this is what I'm trying to reach, this is what I want to put in a campaign, and it will do all the heavy lifting for you. But again, I want to say tool, not bullet, because, and we can go to the next slide, it kind of build on this. I have found in 3 years of using ChatGPT now, I have learned in the last year how to almost manipulate ChatGPT to sound almost identical to myself. it's been years of having to use this and finesse it to get the outcome that I want. I saw someone on one of the social networks post this a couple days ago that everyone thinks that AI is actually super smart, going to do all the work for you, when in reality, it's the person behind the controls that's the smart one that has to program the AI. So you see here, and this is just based on side-by-side comparison, human written emails, 32% open rate, 32.15. AI assisted emails, open rate isn't much higher. It's 32.71. The key from my perspective would be to ensure that whatever AI is spitting out for you sounds like it's being written by a human and not by a machine. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, I agree. I mean, I've gotten to a very complex prompt I use for certain things where I spell out exactly the kind of format I want for a certain write-up, how I want this sentence to convey this. I want this opening sentence to pique curiosity. I kind of add all of that, and that will spit out basically like I would compare it, and I typically when I would ask for like give me a webinar description, for example, I'd be very unimpressed. It always start out, in today's landscape, like X blah blah blah. And I literally say, don't use landscape, don't use this term. And it will help to get something that's like does sound like I wrote it anyways. So it's like it's really about using it creatively, and then of course always proofread, edit. But that's something I found very useful. And I keep a little note with like different detailed prompts that I just kind of change the details for.
True.
And so it works really well for emails
Yeah.
where basically little snippets of copy that you need to have. Yep.
Look, AI is the modern day ghostwriter. My recommendation, two things to kind of unpack there is if you've done any sort of copywriting in the past, you've done any blog writing, written a book,
Yeah.
any sort of thought leadership, pre-AI, pre-ChatGPT, upload all of that content into ChatGPT. Even if you don't have written content, if you have video content, let's say that you have a YouTube channel and you've recorded years worth of video content, take that content, use a tool called Descript, drop those videos into Descript, get the transcript. ChatGPT is so advanced that it knows the nuances in how you speak. It knows how you pause. It knows tonality, even based on how you speak in a video. Even if it's not listening to that video, it's just reading a transcript. So super powerful tool. But the caveat is you have to let ChatGPT know what your goal is, who your ICP is, and work backwards, right? You have to let it know if I'm trying to reach this sort of profile of a customer, right? That has to write in that language and still sound human. Like you said, like, people can kind of tell. They can tell, they can read through the big words. There's a lot of ChatGPT uses a lot of hyphens, a lot of like punctuation that normal people, humans don't use unless you have a master's degree in communications or you're an English major. So it's not the silver bullet. It's just a tool. I think we can move on.
Yep.
All right.
And
So as your key takeaway, use AI to enhance your strategy, but don't rely on it. Use a human touch. I would recommend that get responses built in AI tools to A/B test different versions of your next email. So get in the habit of using get response AI tools to have like 3 different subject lines, 3 different bodies of copy, and then test out your campaigns to see where you get the biggest incremental lift.
perfect. Cool. Well, we've talked a lot about like the content of emails to kind of improve engagement, but another thing that affects it is, of course, the send time and send day even. And that is always an interesting metric I find. I always kind of wonder in my years when I'm sending emails, like what is the best time? Because that is something that is very easy to control. And if it has, any slight improvements, would love always to know it. So I'm glad you have these metrics with you here, and let's hop into them.
Let's do it. So I would say that when I looked at the benchmark report, this is what stood out to me the most, right? Because yes, building a list is highly important, right? If you don't have a list, if you don't have contacts, it's gonna be very hard for email marketing to work out for you, right? That's just like if you don't have followers in social media, you're just not posting into a digital abyss. Um, Content is an important piece of the puzzle, but from my perspective, what's most important is what day and time you send to people, because as consumers, we are hardwired that if we receive an email on, for example, a Saturday or a Sunday, well, I don't know about you. I've got kids, I've got a life. It's always about work, 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 and hustling. I'm kind of off the reservation. I'm off the grid on the weekends, right? After a certain time, I'm kind of like done. But there's certain windows throughout the day where like we're working, we're with clients. So best open time, and this is based on data. I was really, really surprised when I saw this. 3 a.m. to 5 a.m. I know it's very early, right? But
Yep.
let's kind of analyze this. Between the hours of 3 a.m. and 5 a.m. in the morning, do you really think that Nordstrom's and Starbucks and Nissan and all these other brands are sending emails to their list? No, right? Like I thought logically, because I've been doing email marketing for so long, I thought logically that like a 9 a.m. to 10 a.m. window would be the best time to send an email for no other reason than what do we do as humans, right? We get up in the morning, we drive to work, or we start our jobs, and we usually have a cup of coffee in the morning and we'll read our emails typically around like an 8 a.m. to 9 a.m. window or like a 9 a.m. to 10 a.m. window. I was really surprised. I'm seeing the question here, which time is this? This is all based on US data. This is 3 a.m. to 5 a.m. somewhere in the US. I would like to assume East Coast, but I think this is just all encompassing, right? Within the United States. It makes sense to me as a marketer that when you wake up in the morning or when a customer wakes up in the morning, they're probably checking their phone. So if you send an email within this time frame, right, then your email will be at the very top of their inbox. That's what my gut tells me. Again, I'm only looking at numbers with the benchmark data. Like there's no one that's able to articulate this to me. So I'm just using my best educated guess. 5 p.m. to 6 p.m. makes sense, right? 33% average open rate because what are people doing at the time? They're clocking out of work, they're on their phone, they're checking their social media, they're checking their email. So that makes perfect sense. So I would say my recommendation to all of you would be start testing this. Don't start sending a campaign at 3 in the morning. Start testing out. Maybe you send a campaign at 5, or maybe you send it at 6. Use get response perfect timing feature so you can start A/B testing. And yeah, this is from, thanks, Scott. This is from all get response customers in the research. Like we didn't break it down B2B or B2C. It's just a billion emails analyzed, sent through get response to US based, from US based customers. Scott, do you have any thoughts?
I was just gonna say that would be really interesting to break it down by B2B or B2C. I know that's not always a clean break, but it would be really interesting to see if business work related emails are more, if they would change at a different time versus more consumer angle. I could see being outside of work hours working a lot better, whereas being within work hours working way better for B2B, of course. I've had pretty much exclusively experience with B2B. So I have my thoughts about what works, but not too familiar with B2C. But it's really interesting to see this. And like even I think it makes sense, beginning or end. End as in like I'm kind of closing up the day. Sometimes I'm trying to get like knock those through those emails that are still in my inbox. And so I could see myself without thinking that, that's a good time to convert. Maybe someone takes like a quicker action to kind of close up for the day and they get back to that tomorrow. It'd be interesting.
I think we can move on to the next slide here. So sending on Tuesdays or Thursdays are the best days to send. This makes sense, right? You see the numbers here, 33% open rate on Tuesdays, 32% open rate on Thursdays. Why the psychology behind this? So let me ask you a question. As a working professional, let me just ask you, Scott. So you go out all weekend, you're kind of off the grid. Monday, you've got meetings, you've got work stuff going on. Like, do you really care at that point? Like, do you have the mental capacity to be solicited by a brand or sold to by a brand?
No, I'm trying to catch up on everything. Yeah.
Right. Tuesday rolls around though, to your point, you've gone through, you've cleared the inbox, you're feeling fresh, right? You're kind of recovered from the weekend. So Tuesday, based on data, is the best day to send. I used to think it was Wednesday because it's midweek, but it's actually Tuesday. Then Thursday rolls around, right?
Mhm.
Now you kind of gone through the whole week. You're starting to think about the weekend, and then that's the second best day to send emails. Friday, forget about it. Friday, people are checked out, right? Saturday, Sunday, very, very hard days to reach people via emails. So unless you have any other commentary here, Scott, I think we can move on to the next
Yeah.
slide.
Yeah. I think that's like kind of pretty early on. I understood like keep it between Tuesday, Thursday, because that's when you're going to get people engaged. That's when they're still making action plans. And Monday, Friday, I would say are out. But yep.
I just gotta say, shout out to Terrence here. It says 3 a.m. perfect, just before my morning routine of Saratoga water face dunks. There we go. All right, the key takeaways. Best days to send emails are Tuesdays and Thursdays between 5 a.m. or 5 to 6 p.m. for optimal results. Action items, use get response time travel or perfect timing features to test. I love the perfect timing feature because again, I can ensure that my emails get to who I'm trying to send them to at the right times. Run your next 4 campaigns, Tuesdays and Thursdays, and then compare the performance. If like your campaigns run amazing on Mondays and Fridays, shoot, keep doing it on Mondays and Fridays. But again, that's like why you're going to do this exercise. Start programming them on Tuesdays and Thursdays. Slide.
Perfect.
Formatting best practices.
Yeah. Let's get right into it.
All right. So this was the like outside perfect send times. This to me was an eye-opening because I thought that using emojis would actually enhance deliverability and help get more opens. It actually slightly hurts, but there's not a big drop off, right? Using emojis in your pre-headers, with the pre-header, you see a slightly higher open rate at 35%. Without the pre-header, you see, 30%. And then with emojis, this is more so in the subject line. Your subject line, you actually see less. So a lot of times what people do is they'll put emojis in the subject line, or in the pre-header or in both. And then without, again, I was under the fundamental belief that you use emojis, you're going to see like this incrementally higher open rate, because the emoji is catching someone's attention. And in reality, there's not that big of a difference. Scott, I don't know about you. Are you a fan either way of using emojis in your emails?
Yeah, I personally like using emojis because I think it like conveys more in a tighter way. But in emails, like I have not seen them. I've run like, back when I was doing email marketing pretty seriously, I was like running these A/B tests and it was always like conclusive. They were always basically the same open rates. And I was always like hoping, one would like it would start to be clear winner. So it's interesting to see how we react in email. I'm also sure that like when emojis first started getting used in email, I bet they did stand out and were more effective in getting an open. However, now that that is not a new thing at all and other brands do it, it probably has just kind of dropped back down to it is similar. They don't necessarily help. They don't hurt a ton, but yeah, it's interesting.
All right, I think we can move on to the next. So, key takeaways is going forward, incorporate pre-headers in your email strategy to boost open rates, whether you use emojis or so this is going to be not your subject line, because obviously the subject line, we know that's relevant, but this is like the one line of copy when you send out an email, someone sees the subject and then there's like almost a preview text. Don't rely on selling people on the email with the actual preview of the email. Instead, and this is where, again, you can use built-in AI tools to get response, or you can use ChatGPT. Like this is where that pre-header needs to like sell people on the why, right? It's like that extra oomph that you give the subject line. Action item, add a pre-header every email for the next 30 days. Get really creative with what goes in that pre-header and then compare your open rates with the previous month. What are your thoughts, Scott?
Yeah, I would say this is definitely most important to like just understand how each major email provider, like how an email coming in looks. It sounds obvious, but like go look at your own Gmail account and you can see how much of the pre-header you actually is visible. And it basically works as like a secondary subject line. Like people will see it kind of almost subconsciously, but if they see like a very compelling part because you have more room to add more detail, then that can get people to like even more reason to click. I will say in Outlook, it shows a little bit less of a preview message, depending on how someone has their view set up. So it varies also which like which platform someone is reading your email from. But I would say, like, as the data shows, it always helps because it's additional context.
For sure.
Yeah. Cool. And then you had some tips on email personalization with some stats as well. So we'll go into
Yeah, absolutely. So I'm going to go through this quickly because I know we're coming up on the top of the hour and we want to get to questions. So first of all, personalized subject lines versus generic. A lot of people seem to think that you have to personalize the subject line with someone's name. This to me was eye opening because I assumed before looking at this data that if I get an email that says like, "Hey, Carlos," that being that's personalized, you're gonna have a higher likelihood of someone opening it. In reality, my perception of this is that when you're personalizing an email subject line, it looks right off the bat like it's salesy, like you're trying to sell me something. Now, I am a fan of personalizing the copy itself. So it says like, "Hey, Carlos," but also like I see when GetResponse sends out emails to their database, it says, "Hey, friend," right? So that in itself is not a form of personalization, but still being friendly. Generic subject lines blow it out of the water 33% by comparison to personalized subject lines of 23. And then personalized body and generic body, like they're right on parts. It's 32%. So, for open rate. So I would say, like personalize the body, "Hey, Scott," "Hey, Carlos," versus generic. And then you even see like the attribution there and click-through rate is almost double than having a non-personalized body copy.
Yep. Yep. And I totally agree with the subject line. Again, it was maybe something like that when people first started using personalization in email. Maybe it had a higher rate then, but now that everyone can add like a first name to an email subject line, you basically are just identifying that you are a business. And like if it sounds unnatural, like they just want to, it's using up space as well in this, tight, small subject line. So like don't waste the space personalizing it with a name. Focus like on the actual what's your little selling tagline for this email.
For sure. All right. So, key takeaway here, an action item, focus on personalizing the bodies of the email, but leave the subject line more generic. And then monitor your engagement lift over the next few sends that you do. So include relevant content. So even though personalization on the subject line is not good, don't get me wrong, you should personalize the actual body itself to have content always that's relevant to the end user. That's going to be what determines your open rates and click-through rates.
Yep. Perfect. And next, you just had some tips, smart tips that I thought were super helpful. So if we just want to quick go
For
through that.
sure. So
Yeah.
this list right here, it's my smart tips, right? Specific, measurable, achievable, relevant, and time bound. This is basically a guide to help you crush it over the next year using email. First of all, create a lead magnet tied to your most popular content, right? So lead magnets through GetResponse, you can create anything from an ebook, a guide, a 10 steps, right? Like even this webinar could technically be a lead magnet. So associate your most popular content in email with that lead magnet, nurture that audience once they opt into the lead magnet. Definitely set goals. Set a goal to grow your list by 10% over the next 30 days, right? And you're gonna have to do that by getting creative on social, by engaging with that social audience and driving them over to your email newsletter. And then that being said, promote your newsletter at least once a week on social. I love email newsletters because they're like the VIP section for a brand. Use social to constantly talk about your newsletter, even if it's just once a week. Create lead gen content tied to your audience's needs, right? So again, think of those lead magnets, those funnels, those webinars, those hooks as being forms of lead gen, but don't sell right off rip. Like you need to use these hooks to get people to opt into your email newsletter. And once they're opted in, then through automation sequences, that's when you sell to them. And then this is actually my favorite, of all the tips here, and that's inactive subscribers with a win back campaign. So the most overlooked audience that you have are your inactive subscribers. These are people that haven't opened up a campaign from you in 90 days. These are the people that aren't clicking. They've gone kind of dormant. That's the opportunity right there, right? So think about running campaigns specific to them. This is why segmentation is highly, highly important. Segment out your inactive from your inactive subscribers. So whenever you're sending a campaign, the way you're speaking to your active subscribers is very different from inactive. And then challenge yourself to turn those inactive subscribers into an active audience. Yeah, I think we can go to the next slide, Scott. So one thing I want you to keep in mind is you don't need to hustle harder. You need to send smarter. What I mean by this is that you don't need to send more emails. You just need to be very strategic with the email that you send. Part of that working smarter is optimize your send times, personalize the content in those emails. Definitely use AI to enhance the emails to be written specifically to that audience. But again, use AI as a tool. Don't rely on it so much that the human element is stripped away. And then test, track, and repeat what works. Like I'm a big fan of optimizing, A/B testing everything. And then shoot that one tactic from today and apply it to your next campaign. It could be sending out an email at 3 a.m. It could be sending out the perfect time. But more importantly, like just pick one tactic, stick to it, and be consistent. Before we wrap up, Scott, do you have anything to add to that?
No, I think that we covered a lot, and obviously we're coming up on time here. So, yeah, people can. I would definitely suggest that like a great challenge is to pick one of these tactics and try it out, see what happens.
For sure.
Better yet, follow a lot of them since they've shown this is great data off a lot of data. So.
So once again, we're going to be doing 2 more of these sessions. The Get Response Marketer Hire collab. We're going to have Michael Barbara. The next one, he is an email marketing expert. The last one, Michaela Alexis. She is a LinkedIn expert. So we're going to teach you over the next couple of weeks different strategies. This is just scratching the surface, right? For session number 1, we want to get into data. We wanted to have conversations around the data to help empower you going forward. I want to personally invite you to sign up for Get Response. So if you pull out your phone and scan that QR code, you can sign up for Get Response quickly. There's no credit card required. You just need to enter your first, last name, and your email address, or you can just go to getresponse.com. You can use Get Response for 30 days completely free. Like I said, no credit card required. You get unlimited email sends for up to 500 contacts. So if you have a smaller list, start using Get Response with that list. If you're just getting started, use Get Response, start building from the ground up. And if you have any questions whatsoever, whether it's Get Response related, whether it's today's content, please connect with me over on LinkedIn or at CarlosSteele83 on Instagram. And once again, Scott, I'll turn it back over to you, but I just want to say thank you for the opportunity to be here today.
Of course, and thank you for joining. Unfortunately, we're pretty much at time, so we're going to be running over if we go through Q&A. We do have everyone's questions that they submitted here, and we'll probably respond out. We'll respond out to you later today or tomorrow with those questions. We thank you for submitting them, and apologies we ran out of time. But obviously, packed with information, packed with helpful tips. So really appreciate you sharing the data and insights, Carlos, and excited for the next 2 sessions as well. It'll be next Tuesday, and then the following Tuesday after that, the 15th and the 22nd.
Sure. How's it say, Scott? If you have a way as the moderator here to just copy all these questions or save them, I'm happy to answer them via my LinkedIn.
Perfect. Yep. That sounds good. I'll share them with you, and we'll get some answers to everyone.
Sounds good.
Cool.
Guys, thank you so much. We'll see you next week.
Yep. Thank you, everyone. See ya.